Welcome back to another episode of the North Star Takes podcast. I'm Bailey Paulicki. He's Jacob Liberta. You can find all our videos here on our YouTube channel. So if you're a Minnesota sports fan or sports fan in general, please hit that subscribe button. Today we're going to be talking Minnesota Vikings, and we've had a few days here to kind of soak in Kevin O'Connell's opening press conference. We didn't give any immediate reaction to it because obviously there's all sorts of people out there that want to take what he says and immediately jump to conclusions about, especially when it comes to Kirk Cousins, about what it means and I don't know if there's any reading between the lines or if you can take what he says at face value. So we're just going to kind of get into some of the thoughts we had on his opening press conference. Obviously, super impressive guy. He sounds very smart, well-rounded, gives clear, concise answers. He's respectful to the reporters. I mean, at least initially. So it's a complete anti-Zimmer approach to handling a press conference, that we've seen the last 8 years. So what are your initial takeaways from Kevin O'Connell's press conference, and do you come away from this even more impressed with our coaching hire than you maybe were before?
Yeah, honestly, I felt good about it when it was first announced, but after that press conference, I feel just a little bit better. Obviously, from an opening press conference, you can only take so much away. Can't read into too many things, like you said off the top of this.
Mm-hmm.
But really, he sounds a lot like Kwesi, just because he's a very well-spoken guy, very thoughtful in his answers. I mean, he was addressing everybody by name. The reporters that would ask a question, like, "Oh, thanks, Joe, for the question. That's a great thought." And then he'd elaborate and give them a really detailed answer. And I thought that was fantastic. And like you said, it's such a change of pace from the previous regime. I know Zimmer was definitely a crusty guy. He, as time went on, he had wanted less and less to do with the media. I mean, he didn't want it from the start, but he had enough of that by the end.
Yeah.
And then you think about Rick too. That's just old-fashioned GM, right and left, lying to you, right to your face. Just a ton of GM talk, really saying stuff, but not really telling you anything at the same time. So it's refreshing to see these guys come in, be a little bit more transparent, seem like they're pretty like-minded, which I think should be good as far as the collaboration goes there. Obviously, you don't just want one perspective, because then you're not going to open yourselves up to the whole, really the possibilities that you, through team building, you could have. But at the same time, they seem very receptive to others' ideas for how many times they mention, like, including others in decision-making from all these different really backgrounds and all these, anybody that had new ideas to bring to the table. It seemed like they're open to that. So I think this is the start of a great partnership, and I'm really looking forward to really how they play this first offseason. I think this could really lay some important groundwork for the future of this team, not only for 2022, but beyond that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned partnership, because to me, it truly looks like these two are actual partners. It's not like Kwesi's the boss and Kevin O'Connell's answering to him. It's like, that's absolutely the vibe we got from Spielman and Zimmer. You and I were fairly young yet when it was Frazier coaching, and even back to Childress. And, from what we have learned and known, Spielman didn't have complete roster control during the Childress era. I think Frazier kind of started off having some roster control, but then towards the end of Frazier's coaching stint with the Vikings, Spielman kind of took over as having full roster control, and obviously carried that through Zimmer's entire tenure. So it's going to be interesting, because I think O'Connell's going to have a huge input, kind of like Chris Finch does with the Timberwolves. And I think that's important. I think the head coach needs to be heavily involved in a lot of these decisions, because ultimately he's the one coaching these players. He's the one that's got to field a 53-man roster and make decisions at cut down days and stuff like that. So I think just if these two can continue to stay on the same page, if they're in lockstep with one another in this offseason process, whether it's signing free agents or drafting players, I think that's going to be massive for this team. So, yeah, I think the biggest thing I noticed is just that, like you said, he sounds a lot like Kwesi. They seem to be, pointing in the same direction in terms of how they want this franchise to go. And what exactly that is, we don't know yet. We can kind of get into that. Both of them have talked about how they think this team can compete right away. Now, whether or not they actually mean that, whether or not that means they're going to, roll ahead, trying to, basically run it back with this roster and obviously add some pieces through the draft. But I thought it was interesting. He mentioned guys specifically, like they asked him about the defense. The first guy he mentioned was Harrison Smith and how important he is. Now, does he actually think Harrison Smith's important to the long-term future of this team, or is he heaping praise on Harrison Smith to try and drive up some trade value. I know there's obviously all sorts of speculations about Cousins and how he said he anticipates Cousins being here and being the quarterback and how he has complete faith in Kirk. Anthony Barr, he brought up as well, who, Barr is going to be a free agent. Like, he's not even under contract for this next season. So I thought some of that was interesting. And then no words on Danielle Hunter. So, I mean, what do you take away from that just based on some of the players he mentioned? And do you think a lot of this is just kind of smoke screening stuff, or do you think he legitimately meant what he said about some of these guys?
Yeah, it's really hard to say because, I mean, they're brand new at this, so you don't really know their tendencies, don't really know when they're just blowing smoke or not, or if they're actually being truthful. But, I mean, for now, I guess you just got to take it for what it's worth and take it in consideration at least, but not totally buy into it. Like, for instance, Harrison Smith, I mean, that seemed like he went above and beyond as far as singing his praises. So it seems like he's got an idea he could be back in the fold, but at the same time, it could just as well be him pumping his tires to get him out of here. So I don't really know. And then the thing with Kendricks, I'd personally like to see Kendricks back. Very good middle linebacker, and especially if you're in a defense that's rebuilding, you're going to need a leader, and I think Kendricks would be just that. And then Barr, like you said, being a pending free agent, it's not like he has a year left, but it's like he looks like a likely cut candidate. Like, he's literally not on the team as of like next month. So I am curious about that. But at the same time, I think everybody said for years that Barr might fit better into 3-4. And O'Connell brought up in the press conference that's going to be their base defense. But he also mentioned that they'll probably play a lot of nickel too. And that's more of a 4-3 look anyway. So it'll be a very multiple D front. So it's really hard to say at this point if these guys are really in the mix or not. And then to not even address Hunter, though, that seems like probably the most important takeaway of all, because that must mean that they're not quite sure about his future here, and maybe it's not likely. I don't know, but it's just a whirlwind right now. But I think things will become clear very quickly. But for now, I'd imagine at least some of what he said is true, but it's just at least one thing's got to be false, you'd think. So like somebody's getting traded, but it's just hard to say who right now.
Exactly. It's extremely hard for me to imagine that Harrison Smith, Eric Kendricks, Anthony Barr, Kirk Cousins, that all of them would go in one offseason, Danielle Hunter included, one, maybe two of those guys. But like defensively, I think you can make a case, especially if you're able to offload Kirk in his contract, you're probably able to make a case that you can keep paying Harrison Smith, at least for now. I mean, his contract is kind of outrageous for how old he is, but he's still a good player. It's not like he's a washed up safety by any means. Eric Kendricks, obviously, like you said, great leader, middle linebacker. I think he's still playing at a high level, even if PFF had him at his worst grade for a full season this past season. So I don't think he's on the decline. I just think that defense was so bad that he just got caught in so many unfortunate situations. I mean, Barr, like you and I have talked about previously, I'd take him back if it was for basically dirt cheap, because they don't really have any other options right now. And, to see him in a 3-4, maybe in that outside linebacker role, I think would be kind of interesting. So, yeah, there's lots of interesting pieces here, but there's been a report within the last couple of days as well talking about how basically Kirk Cousins is not willing to take a pay cut for this team. Now, this is from, I think, Jordan Schultz is he from Bleacher Report, or he's...
I want to say Bleacher Report, but I'm not positive on that.
Okay. I'm not sure where he's from either, but he basically mentioned that, Kirk Cousins and his team are looking for an extension that, lands him somewhere around the $40 million a year mark. And that's basically making no progress on improving this cap situation. Maybe for one season you can improve the cap by extending him. But if that's the case, man, I mean, how can you move forward with that with a 34-year-old quarterback? That makes no sense to me for a new GM and a new coach to commit to a quarterback like that who's 34 years old, is middle of the pack anyways, and this team's gotten nowhere with him in the last 4 years. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that should make the decision even easier than it already was, in my opinion. If he's looking for $40 million a year going into like his age 36 season or something, get him out of my city. I mean, come on, that's just outrageous for a guy that's not even a top 10 quarterback. And everybody, whether you're a Kirk fan or not, agrees that he's probably not a top 10 quarterback. Like, he's very fringe. Like, if he's at his peak, then he is, but otherwise, no. So why would we pay a guy that ridiculously absurd amount of money when we can find a guy probably a little bit lesser, but for dramatically less cash, and we can build out other parts of the roster? in ways that we really need, because there's a lot of holes that we need to fill. So if we're not going to be able to do that with Kirk taking up all this money, so it's time to get cheaper at quarterback again, whether it be a rookie quarterback or a bridge quarterback, whatever it might be. But yeah,
Yep.
this should make this a no-brainer. If he doesn't want to take a pay cut, and his extension he's looking for is $40 million a year, get him out of here to some team that wants to pay that amount of money to him, I guess, because
Exactly.
I certainly I don't want to do this dance anymore. I've said it numerous times, and I'm saying it again, that it's time for him to go. It's time to turn a new leaf. I already got rid of Rick and Zim. It's time for Kirk to go too, and just
Yep.
start fresh. Get a new culture really in place in that locker room.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And yeah, it blows my mind, man. Like, obviously, players can do what they want. If I was a professional athlete, I'd want to get as much money as I can too.
Sure, yeah,
But
get yours. Yeah,
I mean, Kirk
not here.
Cousins, in a salary cap league, if you're going to demand basically the same amount of money that guys like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes are making when you're not even close to their level, I mean, that I don't know. That clearly that's taken away from your team. First of all, like you will never win when you're making that much money and you can't make up for the faults, that are with the rest of the roster. Because how are you ever going to sign a decent center or a decent right guard to help protect you?
Never. You'd have
You
to
won't.
be really good in the draft.
Exactly. And clearly the Vikings have had issues with that. Maybe this new regime can change that.
You're not going to hit on
Um,
every draft pick either.
no.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It wouldn't make sense to me, I guess, for Kwesi and O'Connell to come in here, new guys trying to start fresh, and then let's ink Kirk up for another 3 years and pay him $40 million each year. That just doesn't make sense to me. So we got the combine coming up in about a week here. It's going to be interesting to see kind of what goes down there, what rumors start flying out of there. Because then, another week or so after that is kind of when free agency is going to kick off. So it'll be really interesting to see kind of what happens here within the next few weeks. But all the rumors are going to start swirling here when it comes down to combine time.
Yeah, I do love all these media outlets like the Ian Rappaports of the world that are just screaming from the mountaintops that, the Vikings are very interested in signing Kirk Cousins to extension. This will get done. And they anticipate him being the next quarterback being not the next quarterback, being the quarterback in 2022. So
Yeah.
it's like, this seems way overblown and really, really getting pumped out there. So I'm really hoping this is just a bunch of smoke to basically turn around and trade him somewhere for a first round pick. That would be just completely ideal, and that would make me so pumped for the really the rest of this offseason.
Yeah, me too. So my final takeaway just from this whole presser, the last few weeks, hiring Kwesi, hiring O'Connell, I'm glad, it seems like their process really, went well in terms of hiring. I mean, Kwesi, it seemed like at the time was like their second option, but like they weren't in a rush to like get Ryan Poles in here. It turns out Kwesi, I mean, it seems like he's going to be a rock star in his role. He's just super well spoken, seems like a super smart guy. They waited weeks for O'Connell. I mean, he was basically one of the last head coaches hired. All these guys started flying off the board, and the Vikings still hadn't officially hired anybody. And, fans were getting weary, and we kind of were too. We're like, oh, okay, what's going on here? But I think it's definitely worth the wait. He's going to end up being a great choice. Seems like a great leader of men. So I'm just excited to see where these guys can take this team. And now the most exciting part of the offseason is about to get rolling here. This year we got an extended kind of exciting offseason because we had to hire a new GM, new coach. But now we got free agency coming up. We got the draft shortly thereafter. And before you know it, it's going to be summertime. They're going to be starting OTAs. And we could have a new quarterback in place. We could have, an overhaul on defense by then. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they do here in the next few months.
Yeah, roster building is a great time in the NFL, no matter what team you are, whether you're the defending Super Bowl champs like the Rams or just a bottom feeder like the Jaguars. I mean, everybody can have some sort of hope at this point in the year and look at who can be the really the core foundation of their team going forward. So I'm really, really looking forward to this.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's going to do it for this edition of the North Star Takes podcast. Like I said earlier, please give this video a like and hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Feel free to give us a follow on both Twitter and Instagram. Leave your comments below. What are your takeaways from Kevin O'Connell's press conference? What do you think he meant when he was complimenting all these players? Do you think he's sending some smoke screens trying to pump up some trade value? Do you think these guys really do want to run it back with this current roster and just think maybe they need a change in leadership? So what are your thoughts? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And until next time, thanks for watching.